Hernan Cortes. As a young man, Cortes was restless and dissatisfied with what he saw as a mundane existence in his native Spain. So it's no surprise that with news of the incredible discoveries of Christopher Columbus pouring in from overseas, Cortes and many other men like him looked west in search of adventure, riches, and fame. Soon after arriving in the New World, he participated in the conquest of Cuba, receiving land and slaves as a reward for his efforts. Yet with rumors of gold-rich empires on the mainland spreading like wildfire through Spanish colonies, it seemed unlikely that Cortes would be prepared to settle down and enjoy his hard-won riches. Cortes was given command of an expedition to the mainland. However, at the last minute, his command was revoked by the governor of Cuba, who was becoming a jealous and bitter rival. Cortes was ordered to return. However, in an act of defiance which would come to characterize his conquests, the order was ignored, and he went on to operate on his own terms, now technically a mutineer. After landing on the mainland, he famously destroyed his ships in front of his men, so as to remove from their minds the very possibility of retreat. The men now knew that they would need to fight and win in order to survive. There could be no turning back. The conquest of the Aztec Empire had begun. Cortes set about forming a network of alliances with natives who had long hated the Aztecs, and saw the Spanish as an opportunity to defeat their old enemy. In October of 1519, his tiny force of 600 men marched deeper inland, accompanied by around 1,000 native allies. His target was the second largest city in the Aztec Empire, and his actions there would set the tone for the conquest. The city's unarmed warriors and nobles were gathered in the central plaza where they were ruthlessly massacred and the city burned to the ground. Perhaps in a demonstration of power, or as Cortes later claimed, punishment for a plot by the citizens to ambush his forces and kill them. Either way, this mass killing was just a taste of the bloodshed to come. His next target was the Aztec capital, where he arrived on November 8, 1519, only to be peacefully welcomed into the city by the Aztec ruler Montezuma. Exactly why Montezuma allowed the Spanish into his city unopposed is unknown. Perhaps he wished to observe them and look for weaknesses, only to crush them at a later date. Or perhaps he mistook the arrival of Cortes with an Aztec prophecy which had foretold the arrival of one of their gods, which coincidentally was supposed to occur at the exact time that Cortes had appeared in Aztec lands. Either way, this decision would prove to be a mistake, and the lavish gifts of gold he bestowed upon his visitors only increased their desire for further plunder. With so few troops, fearing treachery at every turn, and surrounded by a city thought to be populated by up to 200,000 Aztecs, Cortes took the risky move of seizing Montezuma as a hostage in his own palace, intending to use him as a puppet ruler and therefore ensure the safety of his men. While this initially worked, as Montezuma was instructed to pretend that everything was normal, relations between the Spanish and the Aztecs rapidly began to deteriorate as the Aztec people quickly realized what was going on. Yet, in a twist of fate, the governor of Cuba, who had earlier recalled Cortes, sent a force of 1,100 men to forcibly capture Cortes and bring him home for trial. Cortes left the city with 200 men, planning to intercept and neutralize this new threat, however made the mistake of leaving Pedro de Alvarado in charge, who soon after carried out a massacre of many thousands of Aztecs during a religious festival, which would trigger a full-scale rebellion. Cortes had managed to defeat the Spanish sent to capture him, luring many over to his side, with promises of riches to be plundered from the Aztecs. However, he returned to the capital to find the Spanish enclave under siege. Cortes ordered his hostage Montezuma to persuade the people to stop the fighting. However, according to the Spanish, Montezuma was stoned to death by an angry mob. In what later became known as the Night of Sorrows, Cortes led his men on a desperate nighttime retreat from the city. Under constant attack as they fell back, many of the Spanish soldiers were killed, captured, or drowned in the lake, weighed down by their armor as well as the gold and plunder they carried with them. Losses were huge. However, Cortes and an exhausted band of survivors finally made it out of the city and melted away to lick their wounds. Now weak and vulnerable, Cortes could have easily been crushed by his native allies, who had been promised peace and prosperity by the Aztecs if they would just turn against the Spanish. However, surrounded on all sides by the Aztecs, who had cruelly controlled them for centuries and frequently demanded a quota of young men and women to be sacrificed, they decided that the Spanish were the lesser of two evils, and the alliance held. Cortés would exploit these divisions between the Aztec states, many of whom were brutally subjugated by their hated overlords, and relished the chance of obtaining revenge and breaking free. Cortés regrouped his forces and headed back towards the Aztec capital, this time with a much larger force of native allies by his side. He laid siege to the city, which by now had been ravaged by smallpox, carried with the Spanish on their previous stay, and had killed as much as 50% of the city's population. Inch by inch, Cortés moved his forces forward, slowly tightening the noose around the city's neck. Vicious street-to-street fighting characterized the battle, as each side showed no mercy to the other. Any Spanish soldiers who were captured would be immediately taken to the Great Temple to be sacrificed, often in full view of their comrades, who were encamped nearby, watching on in horror as their friends were dragged up the pyramid steps before having their chests cut open, their still beating hearts ripped out. After 3 months of fighting, the Aztecs made their last stand in the marketplace, fighting bravely but unable to hold back the Spanish-led onslaught. It was now that the true slaughter began, as the native allies of the Spanish vented centuries of frustration and anger at the Aztecs, killing thousands of civilians and looting anything of value. Not even women and children would be spared their wrath, and even the hardened conquistadors were shocked at the unfolding carnage. In all, at least 100,000 people are thought to have died during Cortés' siege of the capital, which was now left a smoldering ruin. The mighty and feared Aztec Empire had fallen, and Cortés was left in complete control. One man's ambition, ruthlessness, and strategic brilliance had brought down an empire of millions that had stood for centuries. Cortés began construction of Mexico City on the ruins of the Aztec capital, leveling any temples or buildings that had survived the siege. He had seemingly achieved the impossible, but the man would find no peace. Plagued by political intrigue and rivalries with other Spanish colonists who feared and resented his growing power, he spent his final years desperately seeking recognition for his achievements, feeling as though he had been sidelined by the Spanish royal court. He eventually returned to Spain, embittered by the treatment he had received, where, unlike most of his fellow conquistadors, he died a peaceful death.